There is a package in the cooler at the back of every gas station in this country, in the case beside the milk, that costs about $2 and will outfish the $40 of tackle sitting in the box in your truck. Nobody in that shop knows it is fishing tackle. Nobody who stocks that shelf has ever thought about it for 1 second, and it has been quietly filling stringers for 70 years. Hot dogs. A package of plain, cheap hot dogs. Now, I know what most of you just did, because I have watched grown men do it on a riverbank. You smiled a little, and you decided this was going to be one of those novelty tricks that a fellow does once for the story. It is not. This is a serious bait. It beats a great many things you have paid real money for. And there is a plain reason it works that nobody ever bothers to explain, which is why most men who try it once do it wrong and never try it again. I have fished the same water for 51 years, and there is a package of these in my icebox right now, and it has been in there since Thursday, for a reason I will come to. My grandfather never had them, because they were not a thing in his house. But my father did. And I remember being about 11, and being sent into a filling station on the way to the river with $2 in my hand, and coming out with a package of hot dogs and a bag of chips, and thinking the chips were the point. They were not. The chips were the bribe, and I watched him take that package apart on the tailgate with a pocket knife, and I asked him what he was doing, and he said, "Saving your mother $4. Today, I am going to tell you exactly why a catfish takes a hot dog and what is in it that does the work. Which package to buy and which to leave alone. How to cut it and rig it so it stays on, and the one step almost everybody skips, which is the step that turns a fair bait into the best $2 on that whole street. And then I am going to tell you the part that ought to sit uneasy with you, which is that none of this is hidden. Half the old men in this country know it. Nobody in the tackle trade has any reason at all to bring it up. Stay with me. The first thing you have to understand is what is actually in that package, because it explains the whole business. A cheap hot dog is not really a piece of meat in the way you might picture it. It is meat trimmings and fat, ground to a paste, mixed with salt, and stuffed into a casing. And those three things, in that order, are more or less a shopping list of exactly what a channel catfish is built to find. Fat first. A catfish hunts by taste and smell, and it is extraordinarily good at it. It carries taste buds over its whole body, well over 100,000 of them by the count of the people who have studied it, on the barbels, along the flanks, down to the tail. And the two things it is tuned to above all others are amino acids and fatty acids, because those two together are the signature of flesh. They are what a dead or dying animal puts into the water. A cheap hot dog is loaded with both, and it leaks them steadily. Salt, second. There is a great deal of salt in a hot dog, and salt does two things. It makes the bait read as food in the mouth, rather than as an object, so a fish holds on to it a beat longer instead of spitting it. And that beat is the difference between feeling a tap and setting a hook. And salt firms up the meat, which matters for the third thing. The casing third. That skin holds the whole thing together on a hook in a way that a piece of raw meat or liver never will. Liver is a fine catfish bait, and it comes apart on the cast. And every man who has fished it knows the feeling of throwing half his bait into the lake. A hot dog stays on, so what you are holding is a soft, fatty, salty, self-contained package that broadcasts the exact chemistry of dead flesh and will survive being thrown across a river. If a bait company set out to design that on purpose, they would sell it in a jar for $8. And here is the arithmetic that is the whole reason for this video. A package of cheap hot dogs costs about $2 and holds 8 or 10 of them. Each one cuts into 6 or 7 baits. Call it 60 baits for $2. That is about 3 cents a bait. There is nothing in your tackle box within 100 miles of that number. So, which package? This matters, and it is where most men get it backwards. Buy the cheapest ones in the case, the plainest, palest, most anonymous package on the bottom shelf. The reason is that the cheap ones are higher in fat and lower in real muscle meat, and fat is what you are fishing with. Do not buy the good ones. Do not buy all beef. Do not buy the ones with a fancy label, and do not buy the ones a butcher would be proud of, because they are firmer and leaner, and they do you no favors. And leave the smoked ones and the strongly flavored ones alone as well. Some men swear by them, and I am not going to argue on a riverbank, but I have not seen a difference worth the extra money. And I would rather you had the cheap package and the trick I'm going to give you in a minute than the expensive package and no trick at all. $2, bottom shelf. That is your shopping done. Cutting is simple, and the size matters more than people expect. Cut across the hot dog into discs about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch thick. Thumb end size. That is right for channel cats in the 2 to 6 pound range, which is the size most men are actually catching and eating. Cut the whole package at once at the kitchen table rather than on a tailgate in failing light, because a pocket knife and a wet plank in the dark is how a man ends up with 3 fingers and a story. Go bigger, a full inch, if the small fish are pestering you or you are hoping for something heavier. Go smaller if all you are getting is bluegill nibbling. Some men prefer to cut lengthways into strips instead of discs, and a strip flutters a little in current and covers more hook, which is worth something in a river. Both work. Discs are easier and hold better, and if you are new to this, I would start with discs and worry about the rest later. Now, before I tell you how to rig them, do me one small favor. If this is landing for you so far, tap the like button, and if you are not subscribed to this channel, take 3 seconds and do it, and switch the bell on so the next one finds you when it comes out. That is the only thing I will ask you for today. All right, back to the tailgate. Now the rigging, and there are 3 things worth getting right. Push the hook through the disc so the point comes out the far side and stands clear. Do not bury it in the meat. A buried point will not drive home through that casing. Better still, push the hook through twice so you catch the casing on both sides. That is the difference between a bait that survives a hard cast and a bait you throw off into the middle of the river. And fish it on a simple slip sinker rig. Weight above a swivel, a foot or 2 of leader, hook. And that is all. The slip sinker matters, because the line runs free through the weight, and a fish moving off with your bait feels almost nothing. Leave your bail open or your drag light for the same reason, because a channel cat will pick a bait up and carry it a few feet before he ever commits, and a rod pulled tight lets him feel the weight of it and drop it. Now, step 3, and this is the one nearly everybody skips. And it is the whole difference between a man who says hot dogs are a decent bait and a man who does not sit down all evening. Step 3 is that you soak them, and you do it days ahead. Here is the mistake. A man buys a package on the way to the water, cuts them on the tailgate, throws one in, and catches a fish or 2, and decides it is a fair bait for children. And he is right, because he has fished a plain hot dog, and a plain hot dog is only a fair bait. What you do instead is this. 2 or 3 days before you go, cut your discs and put them in a jar. Then add 2 things. First, a heaping spoonful of garlic powder, which is the cheapest thing in your spice cupboard and which nearly every prepared catfish bait in that shop has in it. Second, something sweet, and this is the one that gets the raised eyebrow. A packet of cheap strawberry or cherry-flavored gelatin out of the baking aisle, or 2 spoonfuls of sugar. Shake the jar so every disc is coated. Put the lid on. Put it in the icebox and leave it 2 or 3 days, and give it a shake whenever you happen to open the door. What happens in that time is that the meat draws all of that in and holds it, so that instead of a bait that leaks fat and salt, you have a bait that leaks fat and salt and garlic and sugar together, continuously, for the whole time it sits on the bottom. And the gelatin does something else useful, which is that it firms the outside of the disc as it dries and makes it tougher on the hook. 2 days in a jar. It costs you a spoonful of powder and a packet worth 30 cents, and it doubles that bait. Now, about the sugar, because I know somebody is going to ask whether fish really care for sweet things. Here is the honest answer. Nobody is certain that a catfish tastes sweetness the way you do. What is well established is that the sugar helps carry and hold the whole mixture together and slows the release, and that the strong scents in these prepared soaks give a catfish a clear trail to follow. Whether the fish likes the strawberry or simply follows the smell, I could not tell you, and I would rather say that plainly than pretend to know. What I can tell you is that a soaked disc outfishes a plain one on my water, every time, and I have been running that comparison for 30 years. That is the most useful thing I am going to say today, and if it earned its keep, hit the like button, and make certain you are subscribed with the bell switched on. It takes 3 seconds, and it is the only reason a fellow talking about a gas station hot dog ever gets put in front of anybody. 2 smaller things while I am here. Keep the jar cold in a cooler on the bank, because a jar of soaked hot dog left in the sun goes off fast and smells like something that has died in a car. And check your bait every 15 or 20 minutes until you learn how long a disc lasts in your own water, because turtles and small fish will take it off you, and you will sit there fishing a bare hook and blaming the fish. Now for the honest part, because I am not going to sell you something I have to shade the truth about. And there are 4 things you need to hear. The first is that this is a catfish bait, and mostly a channel catfish bait. Bullheads take it happily. Carp will take it. Small blue cats will take it. It is not a flathead bait, because a flathead wants something alive and moving, and there is no honest way around that. It is not a bass bait, or a walleye bait, or a trout bait. Use the tool that fits the fish. The second is that this is a bait for eating size fish, and not for trophies. If you are hunting a 30-pound fish, you want a big live or fresh-cut bait, and you already know it. What a hot dog will do is put a mess of 2 to 6-pound channel cats on the bank on a summer evening for 3 cents apiece. And if that is what you are after, then nothing on that gas station shelf is better value. The third is the law and the water, and it is short. Check your state rules on prepared and processed baits, because a small number of places restrict them, and it takes 4 minutes on your wildlife agency page. And take your jar and your scraps home with you. Do not tip leftover soaked bait into the lake at the end of the night. It is litter, and it feeds turtles and raccoons, and it does you no good at all. And the fourth is that this will not save a bad spot or a bad hour. There is no bait that will. A soaked hot dog lying on the bottom of a place where no catfish travels is a soaked hot dog lying on the bottom. Bait is half of it, and location is the other half. And I would rather you heard that from me than found it out over 3 long evenings. Now, why has nobody told you this? Think about who could possibly have a reason to. A hot dog is not fishing tackle. The shop that sells it does not know it is fishing tackle, and the shop that sells fishing tackle would very much rather you did not find out. Look at what sits on that wall in place of it. A tub of prepared catfish bait at $7 or $8, which is fat and salt and grain and flavoring, sold with its own special ribbed treble hooks at $3 a card, and a tube to load it with, and sometimes gloves, because the thing smells so bad that they have to sell you a way to avoid touching it. That is a whole system built around a jar, and every piece of it carries a price. And a package of hot dogs from the cooler by the milk does the same job for $2, needs no special hook, does not require gloves, and doubles as your lunch if the fishing is slow. I do not believe anybody held a meeting about this. I want to be clear, because I have no use for that sort of thinking. It is quieter than a conspiracy, and to my mind, worse. Everybody along the line simply has no reason to raise it. The tackle shop does not raise it, because the tackle shop stocks the jar. The magazine does not, because the magazine sells its pages to the company that makes the jar. The fellow on the television does not, because that company pays him, and because a man cutting up hot dogs on a tailgate does not look like the sport they are selling. Nobody has to coordinate a thing. They only have to stay quiet. And they have stayed quiet for 60 years. And there is a second thing working against it, which is pride. A hot dog does not look serious. A man who has spent $40 on a tackle box wants to feel he is doing something skilled, and cutting up a $2 package from a filling station feels like an admission of something. I have watched a fellow on a bank fish plastic all evening, catch nothing, and refuse a hot dog out of my jar because his boy was watching. That is a real thing, and it costs men more fish than any lack of knowledge does. We kept the old way because we had to. When there is $2 in the truck and a family expecting supper, you do not care in the least what the bait looks like, and you find out very quickly what works. That knowledge never lived in books. It lived on tailgates. I told you my father sent me into that filling station with $2. Years later, when I was grown and had money of my own and a proper tackle box that I was rather pleased with, I asked him whether he had ever wished he could have bought the good gear when I was a boy. He thought about it a good while. Then he said, "The fish never knew what we could afford." And then he said the part I have carried ever since, which was, half of what a man buys, he buys, so that the other men on the bank can see he bought it, and the fish are not on the bank. I have thought about that most of my life, and I do not believe he was only talking about fishing. If this was worth your evening, do the 3 small things that help. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, turn the bell on. That is the whole of it, and it is what puts this in front of the next fellow about to pay $8 for a tub of something he has to wear gloves to touch. So here is what I want you to do. 2 or 3 days before you next go out, buy the cheapest package of hot dogs in the case. Cut them into discs about ½ an inch thick. Put them in a jar with a heaping spoonful of garlic powder and a packet of cheap flavored gelatin, shake it, and leave it in the icebox. Then fish them on a plain slip sinker rig, hook pushed through twice so it catches the casing on both sides, point standing clear, on the bottom, on a summer evening, with your drag light. Then come back and tell me in the comments what state you are in, what water you fished, what you soaked yours in, and what came up. And tell me honestly whether the soaked ones beat the plain ones for you, because I would like the folks reading those comments to see more than just my word for it. I read every one of them, and the reports folks send back are the reason I keep doing this. Next time, I'm going to show you the one knot my grandfather tied for everything he ever caught. It takes about 4 seconds. It holds better than what is printed on the side of your line spool. And almost nobody under 60 has ever been taught it. Most of what you lose right there at the hook. And it is not the line that failed you. Until then, keep your line wet, keep your jar cold, and remember that the people who fed their families off this water with their hands knew things we are only just beginning to remember.